The Office Resilience Challenge. It began with the printer, that stubborn, humming, paper-chewing creature in the corner of the marketing office, which had for years been content with its mundane role in life, until one Tuesday morning, it decided to eat the quarterly sales report and cough it back out looking like modern art. At least, that's how Claire would later remember the day everything began to unravel. With curling edges of ink-stained paper and a smell faintly reminiscent of burnt toast, the printer's rebellion was only the first sign that something in the universe, specifically the small, air-conditioned ecosystem of Hallbrook and Gray advertising, had shifted. The second sign was Roger, the department's eternal optimist, spilling an entire latte into the communal drawer of office supplies, baptizing staplers, sticky notes, and an unopened box of thumbtacks in warm hazelnut foam. Claire sat at her desk, fingers hovering over her keyboard, absorbing the chaos like a passive observer in a zoo enclosure. She'd been with the company for nearly 8 years, long enough to know that the mood of an office could change on the turn of a paperclip. But this felt different, a subtle vibration of unrest, as though everyone's internal compasses were pointing slightly off true north. Maybe it had to do with the announcement that Mr. Grayson, the CEO, would be visiting their floor that week. Nobody had seen him outside of glossy company newsletters and the occasional LinkedIn brag post. The man was practically a myth. To have him appear in their open-plan habitat was like having a celebrity spotted in a suburban supermarket. It wasn't supposed to happen. And yet here they all were, practicing their natural work faces in reflective surfaces. Claire had her own reasons to be uneasy. She wasn't afraid of CEOs, not really. What rattled her was the fact that her current project, a campaign for a gluten-free dog biscuit brand, wasn't exactly going as planned. She'd been nursing it for weeks, trying to coax some spark of brilliance out of it. But every concept kept coming out strangely unappealing, like a meal that smelled wonderful but tasted faintly of cardboard. She suspected the client might have noticed. The energy in the office crackled that morning, part caffeine, part corporate anxiety, and part unspoken suspicion that the universe was testing them. Fingers typed faster. Emails became suspiciously cheerful. People who never made small talk were suddenly complimenting each other's shoes, as if shoe compliments could deflect the beam of a CEO's disappointment. By noon, the printer had been fixed, the latte incident cleaned up, and Roger had solemnly sworn never to balance coffee on top of an open drawer again. But the tension didn't fade, it shifted. It settled into Claire's shoulders, into the faint ache behind her eyes. She could feel it brewing, something ridiculous yet inevitable, like a comedy of errors already in motion, and that was before. She saw the email that IT arrived at 12:03 p.m., with a subject line so bland it was almost threatening. Update regarding Thursday's schedule. There was no greeting, no signature, just 3 brief sentences. Claire read them twice, then a third time, unsure whether she was misunderstanding or whether the universe was once again throwing paper airplanes at her head. By the time she looked up from her monitor, the buzz in the office had gone strangely quiet, as if everyone had read the same thing at the same moment. Heads were turning toward one another, brows furrowed. Somewhere in the back, someone dropped a pen and muttered an unconvincing whoops. That was the day everything truly began, not with the CEO's visit, not with the printer's rebellion, but with a single, cryptic message that promised nothing and implied everything. Claire didn't know it yet, but her neat little world of polite deadlines and lukewarm tea was about to become a stage for one of the most absurd workplace dramas the company had ever seen, and in the end, it would all come down to who could keep a straight face the longest. To understand the scale of absurdity that was about to unfold, one first had to understand Hallbrook and Gray advertising itself, a mid-sized agency wedged between 2 larger, more glamorous firms, like the middle child at a family reunion who Wasn't sure if anyone remembered their birthday. The office was a curious ecosystem. It wasn't hostile, but it wasn't exactly harmonious either. The kind of place where birthday cakes were served with genuine smiles, but also with silent competition over who got the last piece of the good corner with extra frosting. Where people used phrases like circle back and touch base, not because they enjoyed corporate jargon, but because no one dared break the ritual of the meeting language. Claire had been a part of this organism for 8 years, long enough to know its rhythms and peculiarities. She joined straight out of university, bright-eyed, ready to revolutionize the way people thought about advertising. That initial optimism had been carefully folded, pressed, and filed away somewhere between the second and third time a client had asked her to make it pop without defining what it or pop meant. Her desk sat in the third row from the windows, a prime location for overhearing gossip without being directly involved. On one side was Raj, a graphic designer with a permanent air of someone who'd just remembered something important but decided it could wait until after lunch. On the other side was Mary Ann, a copywriter who collected novelty mugs as if they were rare artifacts. Both were excellent at their jobs, but each had quirks that could, on the wrong day, drive a colleague quietly mad. Above them all hovered Monica, the department manager, a woman who had perfected the art of walking briskly while carrying a clipboard. She didn't need the clipboard. Everything she did lived in her head, but it provided a certain ceremonial gravitas to her movements. Monica thrived in chaos, which made her an oddly stabilizing presence in a workplace where chaos was inevitable. Then, there were the satellite characters: Roger, the latte spiller; Felicia, who worked in social media and had the uncanny ability to look busy while doing absolutely nothing measurable; Darren from accounts, whose laugh could be heard 3 cubicles away; and the ever-mysterious IT team, who seemed to appear only when summoned via cryptic help desk tickets. The cryptic email from that Tuesday was still the unspoken centerpiece of everyone's thoughts. It had been sent from admin team, which was essentially a digital black hole of communication. Nobody knew exactly who composed the admin team, or whether it was a single person hiding behind the plural to sound more official. The 3 sentences were vague, but the words schedule change and mandatory were enough to send everyone spiraling into their own private theories. Some whispered that it meant a surprise team-building exercise, which for most was a fate worse than public speaking. Others suspected it was related to Mr. Grayson's visit, perhaps a sudden reshuffling of who would present what. Claire's own theory was less dramatic, maybe a shift in meeting times, or some logistical change that would be forgotten in a week. But a seed of unease still lodged itself in her stomach. Her current workload was already precarious. 2 mid-tier clients with too many opinions, a social media calendar that seemed to rewrite itself overnight, and the dog biscuit campaign that stubbornly resisted all attempts at creative rescue. She'd been hoping for a quiet week to untangle it all. Now, the thought of an unpredictable schedule shift threatened to tip her balance. The rest of the day passed in a half-distracted haze. People tiptoed between their actual tasks and their mental conspiracy boards. Even the office plants seemed to lean in, as if listening for further clues. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, Claire felt as though she'd been bracing for something without knowing what. The truth was, this wasn't the first time Holbrook and Gray had been thrown into collective uncertainty. The office had endured fire drills, sudden software updates, last-minute client visits, and the great coffee shortage of 2019. But there was something peculiar about this moment, an unspoken sense that whatever was coming would be memorable, possibly in the kind of way people tell stories about years later. That night, Claire lay in bed replaying the email in her mind. 3 sentences, plain, unremarkable sentences that had somehow rearranged the mental furniture of an entire department. She wondered, not for the first time, If perhaps work life was less about the tasks themselves and more about the constant undercurrent of human theater, the small, ridiculous dramas that made even the dullest Tuesday feel like the prologue to something larger, and she had no idea how right she was. By Wednesday morning, the vague hum of speculation had grown into a full-blown, unspoken obsession. People arrived earlier than usual, as if punctuality might somehow grant them access to answers. The office kitchen was unusually crowded before 9, with employees lingering by the coffee machine like fishermen waiting for a bite, tossing theories back and forth without ever fully voicing them. Claire tried to keep her mind anchored to the work at hand, but the dog biscuit campaign remained stubbornly uncooperative. The tagline drafts looked limp, the imagery felt forced, and the brand's chosen mascot, a cartoon terrier with an unsettlingly intense smile, seemed to mock her from every mock-up. She could sense that time was running out, though she wasn't sure if the pressure came from the client's looming deadline or from whatever mysterious shift Thursday would bring to BY mid-morning. Another email arrived. Same sender, same absence of a greeting. This time, however, the subject line was even more sinister in its blandness. Reminder: tomorrow's mandatory department activity. The email's body offered no comfort. Please ensure your full availability from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Dress appropriately. Further details will be provided on site. That was IT. IT was a masterstroke of corporate communication, the kind that said everything and nothing at once, forcing the recipient to fill in the blanks with their own fears. Dress appropriately became the spark for 100 tiny mental catastrophes. Was it formal? Casual? Athletic? The ambiguity was a cruelty. No HR handbook could justify. Theories multiplied. Some imagined a surprise skills workshop with an external consultant who'd force them into awkward icebreaker games. Others suspected it would be a presentation marathon for the CEO, a high-stakes audition disguised as a friendly meet and greet. A few, like Raj, quietly prepared for the possibility of physical activity, packing sneakers in their bags just in case. Claire, ever the pragmatist, decided to hedge her bets. She laid out a versatile outfit that could pass for either a brainstorming session or light jogging: comfortable trousers, a crisp blouse, and flats. But beneath the surface, she felt her focus splintering. Every email notification startled her. Every glance from Monica seemed to carry hidden meaning. Even the printer's steady hum sounded like the overture to impending absurdity. The real crack in the department's composure came just after lunch, when Monica emerged from a closed-door meeting with the operations manager. She walked briskly through the rows of desks, clipboard in hand, wearing an expression that could only be described as tightly neutral. It was the kind of face people wore when trying very hard not to betray excitement or dread. She paused briefly by Claire's desk, scanning her clipboard without looking up. "Just be ready," she said, and then moved on. It was not the kind of statement that settled nerves. By the end of the day, productivity had become a distant memory. The department was functioning on autopilot. Emails were answered mechanically. Reports were assembled without passion, and the collective focus was less on deadlines and more on decoding the mystery. Even Felicia, who could usually be relied upon to ignore anything resembling urgency, was spotted Googling corporate activity ideas with the solemn intensity of a research scientist. When 5 o'clock came, Claire lingered a moment at her desk. She told herself it was to finish one last task, but in truth she was just stalling, as if leaving the building might accelerate the arrival of tomorrow. She watched as the office emptied, each person carrying their own version of the same question home with them. That night, her sleep was restless. She dreamed of running through an obstacle course made entirely of filing cabinets, of giving a presentation while standing knee-deep in a ball pit, of being asked to recite the quarterly revenue figures while balancing on one foot. She woke before her alarm, heart oddly light and heavy at the same time. Thursday was waiting, and it promised answers, though Claire suspected they wouldn't be the kind that made sense. Thursday arrived like a coiled spring. The office, usually a gradual hum of arrivals, became a brisk, synchronized march of uncertainly dressed employees, some in suits, some in sneakers, some in strange hybrids of both, as if each had dressed for a different reality. Claire's own compromise outfit suddenly felt like both the smartest and most foolish decision she'd ever made. At precisely 8:55 a.m. Monica appeared at the center of the open floor, clipboard held like a ceremonial. Staff. Without explanation, she instructed everyone to follow her. The group moved as a cautious herd, filing past the familiar walls of their workspace, past the elevators, and toward the conference center they rarely used. Inside, the room had been transformed. Long tables had been pushed aside, replaced by an open space with several stations. On one side, a row of easels held blank poster boards. In another corner, a table was piled high with what appeared to be random household objects: sponges, toy figurines, rubber gloves, twine. At the back, a small podium stood under a projector screen, the latter displaying the ominous title, Holbrook and Gray Creative Resilience Challenge. Before anyone could whisper a guess, the operations manager, Mr. Kemp, a man whose tie knots were as tight as his expressions, stepped forward. In the driest tone imaginable, he announced that the CEO, Mr. Grayson, believed the department's adaptability and resourcefulness could be improved. Today, they would engage in a team-based exercise designed to test innovation under constraint. Translation: they were about to be put through some sort of corporate obstacle course for the mind. The rules were delivered with the stern formality of a military briefing. Teams would be assigned at random. Each station had a unique challenge, blending creative thinking with practical problem solving. Points would be awarded for originality, efficiency, and team spirit. At the end, one team would be declared the most resilient. Claire's name was called, and she found herself paired with Raj, Felicia, and Darren, three people she'd never worked with simultaneously. The matchup already felt like an inside joke she wasn't in on. The first station demanded they create a mock advertisement for an imaginary product using only the random objects provided. Their assigned product? Self-watering office plants. Their available materials? A sponge, a pair of sunglasses, and a broken umbrella. It was a ridiculous sight. Felicia trying to balance the sponge on the umbrella's bent frame while Raj scribbled slogans that ranged from nature without effort to the slightly alarming, "We hydrate, so you don't have to." Darren, meanwhile, insisted the sunglasses were vital for brand identity, though no one understood why. Somehow, they cobbled together a presentation, a sponge root system, an umbrella rain canopy, and a sunglasses-wearing mascot, named Sunny the Succulent. Points were awarded. No one was sure if they'd earned them through skill or sheer pity. The second station involved solving a logistical puzzle that looked like it had been salvaged from a game show. Colored blocks had to be arranged into a specific pattern without speaking. Claire discovered that Darren's enthusiastic pointing often contradicted Raj's meticulous block placement, while Felicia mostly observed and occasionally rearranged blocks in ways that made them look prettier but destroyed any progress toward the goal. They finished seconds before the time ran out, earning bonus points for determination. But the third station, that was where the absurdity reached its peak. They were tasked with developing a 30-second elevator pitch for an imaginary client, in reverse. The ending had to come first, the introduction last. Claire found herself narrating a pitch backward like a magician revealing the trick before. The illusion, while Raj threw in phrases like retroactive synergy and Darren performed a slow clap at random intervals. Felicia simply grinned as if she were enjoying an inside joke that spanned multiple dimensions. By the time the challenges ended, Claire's cheeks ached from suppressing laughter. The teams gathered for the final score announcement, though it was clear no one particularly cared about winning. Mr. Kemp delivered the results with all the enthusiasm of a man reading a weather report. To Claire's mild astonishment, her team was declared the victor. Their prize? A modest golden paperweight shaped like a light bulb, symbolizing bright ideas. Felicia promptly tried to use it as a phone stand. As they dispersed, Monica's clipboard finally lowered, and she gave a faint smile. "Well," she said, "now you've survived a creative resilience challenge. Just imagine what you can do with actual client work." The words were meant to inspire, but Claire knew they were really the curtain line of this strange performance. The CEO never appeared. That day, not once. The office returned to its usual rhythm the following day, but something subtle had shifted in the air. The Creative Resilience Challenge became the new water cooler story, retold with exaggerated gestures and laughter that sometimes bordered on disbelief. It was a moment of shared absurdity that temporarily bridged the usual divides. The copywriters, designers, social media managers, and accounts folks found themselves united by the memory of sponges as plant roots and backward elevator pitches. Claire felt an unexpected lightness as she settled back into her desk. The pressures of looming deadlines and the stubborn dog biscuit campaign still awaited her, but the weight of impending doom had lifted. There was an odd comfort in having been thrown into chaos and come out the other side, golden paperweight in hand. It reminded her that, even in the most corporate of jungles, humor could be a kind of resilience. Raj was already crafting inside jokes about Sunny the succulent that spread like wildfire through emails and Slack messages. Felicia turned the golden light bulb into a makeshift award for most creative coffee spill, an honor Roger accepted with mock solemnity. Darren, for his part, vowed to train for next year's event, which left everyone wondering if the Creative Resilience Challenge was to become an annual tradition. Monica's brisk walks continued, clipboard firmly in hand, but Claire noticed a new softness in her eyes, as if the challenge had humanized the manager who usually seemed untouchable. Even Mr. Kemp's announcements, once dreaded for their dryness, were now met with amused groans rather than groans of actual despair. In quiet moments, Claire found herself reflecting on how unpredictable work life could be, not just the tasks or projects, but the people, the moods, the small, unexpected moments that reminded her why she stayed. For all its frustrations, Holbrook and Gray was a stage for unscripted human moments. Sometimes those moments were stressful, sometimes they were ridiculous, sometimes they even brought laughter. Yet beneath the humor, Claire recognized a deeper truth. The day's chaos had exposed vulnerabilities masked by professionalism. The fear of failure, the anxiety about being judged, the desperate need to belong. These were the real challenges that no team-building exercise could fully capture, but that everyone grappled with in silence. The golden paperweight was a token, yes, but it also symbolized something more fragile: hope, connection, and the stubborn refusal to take oneself too seriously. As the week wound down, Claire felt a cautious optimism growing. The dog biscuit campaign still demanded rescue, but now it seemed less like an insurmountable wall and more like a puzzle to solve with a team that had, however reluctantly, discovered a shared sense of absurdity and resilience. She allowed herself a small smile, knowing that whatever came next, she wasn't facing it alone. As Friday afternoon filtered softly through the office windows, the usual clatter of keyboards and muted conversations carried a different tone, one less edged with tension, more laced with a quiet camaraderie born of shared experience. The week that began with cryptic emails and mounting anxieties had gently folded back into something resembling normalcy, but Claire sensed that beneath the surface, something had permanently shifted. The Creative Resilience Challenge became more than just an awkward team-building exercise. It turned into a symbol, a reminder that even the most mundane or maddening aspects of work could become moments of human connection, if only people allowed themselves to see it. For Claire, it was the unexpected glue that bound a fractured team and eased the weight of deadlines and client demands. She glanced around the office, noticing Raj's animated gestures as he recounted the day's events, Felicia's triumphant smile as she awarded the golden paperweight to Roger for his historic coffee spill, and Monica's rare, genuine laugh as she shared a joke with the IT guy who had finally emerged from his cubicle. These scenes, ordinary yet alive, painted a picture of a workplace that was far from perfect but unmistakably real. Claire returned her gaze to her screen, where the dog biscuit campaign awaited final touches. The absurdity of the week had peeled away layers of perfectionism, leaving space for creativity to breathe again. She thought of the tangled metaphors of sponges and umbrellas, backward pitches, and stubborn mascots, and realized that sometimes it was the detours and missteps that led to the most unexpected breakthroughs. Work, she mused, was less about flawless execution and more about embracing the unpredictable script of human quirks and resilience. The printer would jam again. Coffee would be spilled. Emails would arrive with ominous vagueness. But somewhere in the chaos lay stories worth telling, laughter worth sharing, and connections worth cherishing. That as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the empty desks, Claire allowed herself one last smile. The office was quiet now, but the echoes of the week's laughter lingered like a secret promise, and perhaps, in the end, that was the true achievement of the Creative Resilience Challenge, not a golden paperweight, but the realization that sometimes surviving the absurdity of work was the greatest success of all. The end.